Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for the month of February. And Andy, can we have roll call, please?
Yes. Chair Costello.
Here.
Commissioner Tantillo.
Here.
Commissioner Svestka.
Here.
Commissioner Gormley Barnes.
Here.
Commissioner Skovich.
Here.
Commissioner Holm.
Here.
And Commissioner Bruno.
Here.
All right, we have a quorum.
Okay, are there any housekeeping things we need to talk about regarding Zoom meeting?
No. I would just say one thing really quick with the minutes is Justin Bruno is marked absent on the January one. We gotta change that to present, but that's the only thing for the minutes.
Okay. Okay, if everybody would join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, our first order of business is to approve the meeting minutes from our December 7th meeting. Did all the commissioners get a copy of it? Had a chance to take a look? Does anybody have any corrections or additions to make to the minutes?
Noreen, are we looking at them both collectively or is individual?
Just first one, December 7th,
Okay.
the December meeting first.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hearing no modifications, would anybody like to make a motion to approve the minutes of the December 7th, 2021 meeting?
I'll move to approve them as presented.
Danielle, and second?
Second.
Second, Justin. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing no opposed, motion carries to approve the minutes of the December 7th, 2021 meeting. Next order of business, I'd like to approve the minutes from the January 4th, 2022 meeting, and looks like we'll just add Justin as present and not absent for that one. Commissioners, you've all had a chance to receive and review the minutes. Okay. And would anybody like to make any additions or modifications?
I did have one suggestion for a potential clarification.
Okay.
If the other commissioners are in agreement, under new business number 3, we had a pretty lengthy discussion about the triangle PUD as it relates to the proposal for the Old Dome restaurant site. And I think one of the action items that came out of that discussion was going to be to try to broker a conversation between the two property owners there and see if there was a better arrangement that could come out of that from a site planning standpoint. So all I see here is just that the architect presented and answered questions from the commissioners, but I didn't see any reference to that follow-up that we had discussed.
I recall that as well.
I think that's a good point. I think we should add a reference to it or something.
It does note that the Wolf Road project was discussed, and we did talk about the potential impact of that on both of those properties in the future. But I think that the upshot of that discussion was that we were going to hear back with a potentially revised plan after that. Hopefully that discussion had taken place.
And Diane, remind me, this is Greg. Were we under the impression staff was going to facilitate that conversation, or how are we going to broker that deal?
Yeah, sorry, Diane. Yeah, staff will try to work. Oh, sorry, Dan. Okay. Staff will try to work that out. We're waiting to get more information. We're actually going to talk about this in just a little bit, but the PUD applicant is still working on their traffic study and some other things. So we're not at that point yet, but when the time comes, we will approach the plaza and try to get everyone together. So
Didn't we talk about trustee Donnenberger being part of that too?
that too, yeah, yes.
Yeah.
And tying it in with facade and all the other stuff. So, but yeah, when we get to that, when the developer is at that point, we'll try to get everyone together. So
Okay, that's good. Can we make just another statement or two on that as part of the minutes?
absolutely, yeah.
And we discussed it, and then we'll try to follow up, continue to follow up. Okay, good suggestion. Any other thoughts, additions? Hearing none, if somebody would like to make a motion to approve the minutes of January 4th, 2022.
I'll move to approve those as amended.
Okay, Danielle, as amended, thank you. And second,
I'll second.
Diane, second. All in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries to approve the minutes from our meeting of January 4th, 2022. Thank you. And now we move on to our old business 6921 Joliet Road PUD application. What do you?
Yeah, so the developer is still working on the traffic study. There's also a possibility of attendance or something like that. So things are still being worked on. I think we might get more next month by the time traffic study is done and there's more information about possible tenants. So at this point, we're just asking for a continuance till next month.
Okay, do we need to vote on that?
Yeah, just voice vote would be good.
Does anybody have questions or comments or discussion before we make that motion? Okay, would somebody like to make a motion to continue the PUD application for 6921 Joliet Road?
I'll move.
Okay, Dan, and second?
I'll
Second.
second it. Oh, sorry, or Greg.
Third.
Danielle, second. And all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion carries to approve continuation of the hearing of the PUD application of 6921 Joliet Road.
Who's there?
Okay. Okay, new business. We're going to talk about the application for the PUD variance for 113 20 70th place. Do you want to start out, Andy?
Yeah, I will. So a little background. In September of 2020, the village board passed the PUD ordinance, kind of similar to the one at the Triangle, but this one is on 70th place, which is more geared towards industrial or transportation related developments. And it's kind of the same idea, but for a different area. And we have now our first applicant. It's a gentleman by the name of Mr. Kostic. Tonight, his representative attorney, Kate Duncan, is on to give the presentation, and she'll do that in a little bit. But basically, we're looking at a small truck parking site on 70th Place. It's on a small triangular lot. Actually, let me have photos of it to show everyone. I'm just gonna bring them up and share my screen really quick. But the idea is that it would just be a small truck parking lot, 5 to 10 trucks or parked there, and that overall it would probably bring in about $1,000 of revenue, so minimal amount, but overall it meets the underlying PUD requirements and the underlying B5 zoning requirements. And so village staff is recommending approval of it. There was some concern voiced. I'm just going to read it now instead of the public comment sections. We did receive a public comment about it. And then I will bring up the photos to show everyone. But the concern from the public comment was the idea that, it's only going to bring in $1,000 in tax revenue. It might cause road wear and tear, and also could be a possible noise nuisance for some of the people on the south side of Arrowhead Trail or Flat Creek condos. And then there's also concern about what kind of material might be inside the truck. So as far as the noise nuisance, village staff is not concerned because it's on 70th Place, which is all industrial and right next to the freeway, which I'll show you right now, actually. Let's see. And then, so here it is. Right here where my mouse is where the site, the little parcel of land is. And then right below that is the tollway.
Mhm.
And then as far as the materials, the use does not allow for any kind of hazardous material or anything like that. Just be normal trucking material. And a lot of times the trucks won't even be full because the intention is that after the driver drops off the truck at wherever they're going, then they would go back to that place to get their vehicle. And I'm sure Kate will talk a bit more about that as well. But staff is recommending approval. It meets the underlying criteria. And with that, I'll hand it off to Kate Duncan, who is here to talk about the development a bit more and answer any questions that people may have.
Okay.
Thank
Welcome.
you, Andy. Good evening, Madam Chairman and Commissioners. My name is Kate Duncan. I'm an attorney in Chicago, and I am appearing this evening on behalf of the applicant. Truck Center Kostic Inc. is actually the name of the property owner, and so that's our formal applicant. Sasha Kostic is the 100% owner of Truck Center Kostic Inc. And so it's Sasha Kostic that will actually be the owner of the property. And we're here before you this evening in connection with an application for a plan development for the property at 11320 113th 20 70th Place in Indian Head Park. The applicant is seeking to use the property for parking and storage for semi-trucks and or trailers. So the parking area will be used by tractor trailer drivers who need to park and store their personal vehicle while they're driving the tractor trailer, and then when they're finished with the tractor trailer driving, they can exchange the tractor trailer for their personal vehicle. So applicant believes that the lot will hold no more than 5 to 10 tractor trailers / vehicles. And so it's a pretty limited use of the site for this trucking use. In accordance with ordinance number 2020-25 that Andy just referenced to you, applicant is here for seeking approval of a plan development. Since the ordinance allows property to be used for tractor trailer parking, storage, and maintenance, so long as any proposed development is approved as a plan development. As Andy showed you, the property is triangular in shape and it's bounded by Route 55 with Indian Head Park's Public Works facility across the street. And then to the west, there's another parcel that's actually used for the same type of a use as our applicant is proposing for truck parking. So applicant is in fact proposing to make some improvements to the site as well, including grading the site. They'll remove topsoil and any unsuitable materials in the parking area. They're going to reshape the roadside ditch. They're going to install a driveway culvert, and they'll pave the lot with compacted materials. And they'll also do some landscaping along 70th Place. So the site is pretty small. It's approximately 14,000 square feet. And so the uses for the site will be pretty limited. The property will have 2 curb cuts off of 70th Place. One will be for ingress and the other will be for egress. So they're not both two-way traffic. They'll just be one way in and one way out. And so applicant has reviewed the standards for review for granting the plan development. And we believe we've satisfied all the standards, and we provided a full description of that in your packages in the application package. But as a brief review, applicant is designing and operating the remote parking and storage area for semi-tractors and trailers in such a way that it will not impair an adequate supply of light and air for adjoining property owners, and nor will the use endanger the public health and safety. The proposed use will not be injurious to the use or enjoyment of other properties within the area, nor will it diminish or impact or impair other property values within the area. Again, the surrounding uses are very similar in scope. It's an industrial area, and it's compatible with the other uses in the immediate vicinity. The use is not going to have any impact on public facilities or resources. The number of trucks coming and going will be very limited, and so we believe that it will have limited impact on any of the public facilities. The site does not have any known archaeological, historical, or cultural significance. The parking area is going to be designed to provide adequate access for emergency vehicles, and it will not impact access to adjacent properties or any other parking areas. And the property is adequately buffered, having 55 to the south of it, and the public works facility to the north of it, and then again, just another trucking facility to the west of it. And no signage is proposed for the site. So with that, I am here ready to answer any questions you may have, and I respectfully request your favorable approval of this requested plan development.
Okay. Commissioners, any thoughts or comments, questions?
Yeah, Kate, this is Bob Tantillo. When you talked about grading, was there any need for a soil test to determine what was underneath that topsoil that you're about to remove and improve upon?
You know, I will have to inquire with my client as to whether he's had any sort of environmental testing done on the site. I don't believe that anything is required in order for us to move forward with the village for permitting, but I can further inquire as to whether he's had any phase 1 studies or anything done on the site.
And then a follow-up, Kate, anything that you're planning, as you described, is nothing more than a staging area for trailers and maybe personal auto. Is there anything in the near future that you're considering, and how would we as the village, if the answer is yes, if there was going to be structures built on that property?
No, there is nothing further that my client is considering doing with this lot. He thinks this is going to be the best use for the lot. It's a difficult location, being right on the expressway, and he thinks it will be well used by those people who need it, but he does not have another intention for this property.
Okay, then finally, the surface that you guys are planning on building, is it blacktop, or is it described somewhere in here and I missed it?
Yeah, no, it is like a compacted material. It's not blacktop exactly.
I think it's called macadam.
That's what it is. Thank you, macadam.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like it's basically like compacted rock. It's it's meant to prevent any dust or anything like that, but it's not full on asphalt or concrete.
Okay. And then any drainage that you're anticipating for runoff?
As we get permits, we will meet any and all stormwater requirements from the village. And so they do intend to deal with any drainage requirements that are required.
Okay. That's it for me.
I had a couple questions. I'm looking at the Google Street View, which is a little different vantage point than the overhead image that Andy had up. But it appears to me that all of the landscape buffer material that's sort of between where the tollway is and this site is actually behind a chain link fence. So I presume that that is all actually on the tollway property, and that will remain.
I believe I've done that same sort of walk around on Google Earth I think that you're doing. And yes, I believe that is tollway property, and that is not our property.
Okay, so it's only the mode area that we're looking at, in this view that is actually going to be.
I think so. I'm not sure exactly what you're looking at, but I
can see that there's sort of a low. It looks like a chain link fence, and it's just all heavy overgrowth kind of behind it, and that appears to all be on the tollway property. So that would still be there, presumably. The question I have actually is about the overhead utilities in this location. And I didn't drive the site before the meeting, unfortunately, but it looks to me like, let's call it the western half of the frontage on 70th Place, there's actually overhead wires. There's one pole in the public right of way there. And it looks to me like the utility lines are very low. Like low
So-
enough that I don't know what size truck you're accommodating here, but I wonder whether those overhead wires are high enough.
I don't know the answer to that question, Diane. I'm sorry, Commissioner. We can investigate that though. And obviously the use will not be good for my client either if those wires get in the way of a truck being able to come and go. So as they're going through the permitting process, they'll need to investigate whether those wires need to be relocated, and then they'd have to do that appropriately.
I mean, the functioning of the site works best if they go in one way and out the other.
Right,
Obviously,
that's their
'cause it's
intention.
so awkward. Okay. So yeah, that's something you'd have to, in addition to the soil investigation, which I concur is something that should be looked at. Some confirmation that you'll actually be able to use it in the traffic pattern you intend to, if those wires aren't going to be an obstruction.
I can get an answer on that.
Other questions, comments? I was curious if your client has other such facilities.
He does have other trucking facilities in Indiana. That is his main business, is trucking.
Is that a kind of business that's on the rise a little bit? I mean, there's so much more delivery of goods and such to homes anyway.
Right, I would think so. I'm not sure. I think he has a very good, solid, steady business. And I think he is experiencing an increase in demand. I can't speak for the industry itself, but I'm sort of in agreement with you, Madam Chairman, that I think probably the whole industry is increasing.
Yeah, it's a great location right off all the expressways for the type of business, seems to me. Good use of the land.
Yes.
I just have one question, and it's probably covered under other rules or regulations about storing like hazardous materials. Would that be in any of the shipping containers that'll be stored there, or what is he going to be, I guess, storing there, or what does he transport?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner, for your question. I meant to address that when I was giving my presentation a minute ago. These trucks that are coming will be empty. Only empty trucks will be stored in the lot. It's once they're finished with their deliveries, will they come back and either swap out with their car or,
So
swap out
basically
with
a
their
holding
car.
area.
So it's really just a big holding area for drivers to store the trailers and their trucks, because they need a place to wait with their vehicles in order to pick up the truck and then go get the materials that they deliver, and then they'll come back with an empty truck.
Thank you.
And this is Dan. I've got one question. You mentioned earlier that there's a trucking place across the lot that uses in similar fashion. Are the trucks parked there? Are they semis, or are they the same as the trucks that you'll be parking there? I guess I don't know enough about the site. I apologize for that.
And I am sorry, Commissioner, I'm not sure of the scope of the trucks that are parked next door. When I've sort of done the same Google Earth walk around, it looks like there are trucks that are parked over there. And I think they're sort of the semi truck / trailer that I've seen in that lot, but there could be other trucks that are stored there. I don't know entirely what they're doing on that lot. I just know what I've seen from the visuals.
Yeah, it's the place next to them is sometimes they do park semis there. They sell or store the chassis of trucks, which is like the front part. So yeah, there are semis that go in and out of there quite often.
One follow-up, Kate. So in terms of security, is the owner planning on adding additional lighting or fencing to secure the rigs or anything like that?
He is open to that, I think, if he determines that there's an issue. I don't think he's intending right now to have it fenced and gated and locked. I think he'd like trucks to just be able to come and go. He doesn't expect there to be a security issue here. But if he finds that there's a problem, I think he will install a fence and a gate. But I don't think he's expecting to do that at this point.
And then in terms of how we protect the lot, the village, if somehow we come to a point where we determine there's insufficient lighting, to properly, help and assist in that security effort?
Mhm.
Would the owner be willing to, and could we somehow get an answer on that by adding additional security lighting?
Yes, I discussed this with the property owner as well. And if there is a security issue there, he is willing to install lighting if it becomes an issue. Again, he's not expecting this particular location to have any security issues. He thinks it's in a good area and a good location that's not going to have issues. But he's willing to install lighting if that's necessary.
Yeah, I'm thinking from a police standpoint, as they make the rounds, it'd be nice to provide some lighting to get some visual confirmation to help and assist the owner in properly maintaining the property from a security standpoint.
Does your client own the property at this time? Has he purchased it recently, or has he owned it a long time?
He's owned it for quite a while, I believe.
I see. Okay.
Hey, Andy, what's the benefit to the village?
So it is minimal from the revenue perspective. You're looking at a little over 1,000 a year. But the reason that we're recommending it is because that land has been unused for so long, and there's it's almost impossible to put a building that would match the use there. So you really only have the option of, for this site, leaving it empty, or maybe if the property next door bought it to increase their own truck storage and own truck parking. So the thought was that, it'll bring in a little bit of revenue. They got to get a business license and stuff like that. And it will increase the property values a little bit. But as far as there's not a whole lot.
And forgive me for having forgotten or not listened closely enough, but under this zoning, what kind of building would be allowed to be constructed? I understand we're working with a very uniquely shaped piece of property, but under the zoning, if this were a perfect 3-acre lot, what kind of buildings could we expect as allowable uses for this lot?
Yeah, so it's mostly having to do with either industrial stuff or like truck storage is a big thing that's in the B5. So it's B5, and that has a lot to do with like industrial sales, like sales of like tractors as an example, or like the other business that's down there, the chassis, it's called Chassis Support Company. They sell the front of trucks. So what I mean by it is that like another building would have a hard time using it properly, is because the kind of use that it's intended for is something that's, you're going to need a large building to hold it, most likely. So you can't really have a sales or something like that on such a small lot. So
in the facility that's selling chassis, are they generating sales tax?
No.
They're not.
We do have we a few years back, probably 4 or 5 years ago now, the village increased the business licenses for businesses on like that would fall under that category in order to do it, but really no, most of the businesses on 70th Place and then also on Roofers Road, which is the road right next to it, they don't generate a whole lot of revenue for the village.
Will the petitioner apply for a business license to operate according to how they describe they're going to operate on this site?
I'm sorry, I missed that. You lagged there. What did you say?
Oh, will the petitioner will the petitioner apply for a business license to operate the way they've described they're going to operate?
Yeah, they'll have to get a business license, which will, I think, come out to be about $750, something like that. And then the property taxes too. So That's
And the
really,
business license is a one-time thing, or is that renewed?
it's once a year,
Okay.
Um,
Hey, $750. That's great.
Yeah.
So what I've seen in other communities where we've had outside storage lots, and I don't know that we have the ability to levy this, but because there's the potential, albeit very, very small, given how long this lot has sat vacant, there is the potential to put a building on the site. And I've seen instances where, hey, yes, of course, it's an allowed use trailer storage. However, because of the fact that you're deferring the potential for other allowable uses, income generated by on this site, they levy an impact fee. And I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this, but do we have the ability to levy an impact fee? Say they can store 5 trailers. It's $1,000 a trailer that we can levy on a one-time basis. Is that something? Is that a tool we have in our chest, or if not, is that something we could look into for the next guy?
I think it might be something. It'd be kind of hard, especially since part of the impact fee is that it has to have a large, and ideally it should be if it has a large impact on public services. And in this case, since the trucks are not going to be that numerous and most of them are going to be empty, it's not like it's going to be destroying the roads or anything like that.
Well, I think in this sense, the impact would be potentially deferred income, not necessarily the impact to the infrastructure. But again, it is a reach. But I have seen in other communities where they levy an impact fee, and by God, here's the check, and you go on with it. And I don't think we can levy it here because we don't have the ability to do that through our current ordinances. But
yeah,
it might be something we look into.
Yeah, definitely, especially if any kind of large scale development were to happen in the corridor. But for now, yeah, I don't think that it's the right way to go. But we talked about it briefly, but yeah, we'll see going forward for larger developments.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the aerial, and there's a bunch of trucks sitting there, and we're not really benefiting other than property taxes on the aggregate. It is a pretty significant piece of property. Again, this is a smaller piece, but on the aggregate, we've got a big trailer storage lot that we're collecting $1,000 a month or a year on. So it feels like, yes, it's a perfect use for this little triangle and this little area of Indian Head Park. But I also don't want to lose sight of the potential benefit that the village could be leaving on the table for future inquiries. And sorry to belabor this, everybody.
Yeah, good discussion.
And excellent petition, very well put together. I see it as a gravel lot. I am interested to see how it's going to be drained and how we're going to control the quality and the quantity during a storm event. But I'm sure our technical professionals will guide you and make sure that you guys, from an engineering perspective, are doing what you're supposed to be doing to stay in conformance with all the local MWRD ordinances and county and everybody else.
Any further discussion, questions? Hearing none, would anybody like to make a motion that we recommend to the board that this petition be approved?
I'll motion, Noreen.
Okay, Greg. And second?
I'll second.
And second is Justin, I think. And all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Okay.
Thank you very much, commissioners. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Good
Thank you.
presentation. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Andy,
you.
for all your help too.
And Andy, it's not on the agenda, but weren't we now going to hear from our village attorney?
Yeah, it's on the, should be in the new, under 11.320 zoning workshop.
Oh, there it is, right there. Sorry about that.
No, no.
Yes,
So,
I do.
yes,
Okay.
village attorney Patrick Rankin is here, and he's gonna, I'll hand it off to him to give his presentation.
Okay.
So thank you, Andy. Good evening, everyone. It's nice to see you all virtually. Unfortunately, I'd rather see you all in person, but someday we'll get there again. So I appreciate the opportunity to address you just in terms of context. And I think the last village board meeting, there was a discussion that there was some questions that were arising sort of as to the evaluation of certain of the petitions. And so I suggested, instead of me sending an email or doing a memo to you all, that maybe it would be best if I came to the meeting and I could share some thoughts on that and maybe help address some of the questions that you had. And I think particularly it related to the evaluation of the hardship standard, if I'm correct. And so I did sort of tailor my remarks to that. But just watching you operate in the last public hearing that I just saw you all operate, you certainly are conducting a full and fair hearing and are asking the right types of questions. So I don't have anything more to add on that, but I did want to address some of the standards when you're, and I think this is as it was presented to me in the context of evaluating sheds. And I know you have a number of sheds after this little break on the agenda tonight. And so when you're evaluating any zoning relief, but especially a request for a variation or a special use, there are certain standards that are set forth in the Village Code of Ordinances, which is really your guide. You all, I'm sure you recognize, are essentially sitting as judges weighing the evidence of each case that's presented to you. And I saw in some of the minutes that were approved or will be approved at this meeting, at one of the last meetings, one of you mentioned that each of these is to be determined on a case-by-case basis. And that's exactly right. There's no one-size-fits-all zoning. There's no one rule that applies across the board. And that's why there's zoning boards and planning and zoning commissions to evaluate these things and to look at the evidence that's presented in each particular case that comes before you. So what do you do? How do you evaluate? Well, that's where you go back to the standards. And I'm going to try to share my screen. Even though we've been on Zoom forever, I'm still trying to figure this out. So bear with me. Maybe I sent it to Andy too, if he's got backup. If not, I have the citations. So let me see I'm not a host, Andy. It's telling me I'm not a host. I hate it when it tells me I'm not a host. So
let me make you a host.
Put your video on. Yeah, you're there.
All right, let me try it again. Let me see.
Channel 6 is working for me.
All right, does anybody see any? Is it working?
I don't think so, Pat.
Okay.
Pat, you want me to share it?
If you could, thanks. That's why I sent it to Andy too, because I knew he'd have my back.
No problem. We pull it up really quick.
Thank you so much. Sorry for the delay, folks. I know you have a heavy agenda tonight.
Pat, will you actually make me the host again?
Yes. I think. How do I do that, Andy?
So on Zoom, go to the my face, and then click on the three dots, and then make host.
This is really beyond me, Andy.
Here, or I can take it. Actually, never mind. I took it back from you.
There you go. Take it back.
Yeah. All right. Let me share my screen. Okay.
Thank you. So if you could go to slide, why don't we go to right to slide 7, please?
Okay.
Okay, so this is, so as I was indicating, there are standards that are set forth in the zoning code, and this is what you're to evaluate these based upon. So we'll just go through briefly. For variations, you can go to for variations, there are the authority of the commission, and then there's 3 main standards for variation. And if you scroll up just a little bit for me, Andy, to 10, I think it's slide 10. There you go, the 3 main standards. So on the screen now are the 3 main standards, and essentially that the property cannot yield a reasonable return, that the plight of the owner is due to unique circumstances, or the variation will not alter the essential character of the locality. So the testimony that you hear, these are the standards to which you're to apply that testimony in terms of making the decision. But if you could go to the next slide, Andy. So when you're evaluating whether there's a hardship, is there a particular hardship as it relates to the variation request? You're allowed to supplement the standards that I just showed you by this A through F that's on the screen. So you can look at whether it's a mere convenience, if it's not based upon a desire to just make more money, that the difficulty or hardship has not been made by or created by the person having an interest in the property, will not be detrimental to public health, safety, or welfare, will not impair adequate light and air, or diminish property values. And each one of these, not one of these standards is dispositive over the other. So as you consider the evidence, as you consider what's coming before you, if you kind of have this as your default to go back to, you can weigh each of these provisions in trying to come up with whether or not the applicant has met the standards, which is the applicant's burden. The applicant has met the standards for you to grant that relief. Now, another key provision in here that you'll see on the screen is up in the preamble or the prefatory language of the additional standards. It says, considering the following facts favorable to the applicant. So that there's a deference given to the applicant, in terms of seeing if they can meet the standards. So with that, hopefully that sheds some light in terms of the sort of the guide rails for you all to take a look at when evaluating variation requests, and particularly the hardship. So if you could scroll down a little to the next slide, there's also special use standards as well. And so there's 3 standards in the village code for the special use. There's, keep going down a little bit, there you go, is deemed necessary for the public convenience, is designed to protect the public health, safety, and welfare, and will not cause substantial injury to other properties in the neighborhood. So a lot of these requests are kind of intertwined and coupled, but just keep in mind that there are different standards for both, if it's solely a variation or a special use, and then if it's combined together, then those are those you evaluate all of the standards for all of the relief that is before you.
Could I, sorry, could I ask a question?
Yes, please go ahead. Do you want the screen on, the share screen still on, or?
No, the shared screen is fine. And this is more of just how a standard for special use would be applicable in some of the conditions that we're talking about.
Yeah.
So for item number 3, that would not cause substantial injury to the value of another property in the neighborhood.
Right.
With regards to sheds, I know we're starting to see some petitioners that want one on property that it does not exist. Should we be considering things like drainage and how the placement of a shed on their property would affect drainage to other neighboring properties in terms of injury to a value of another property, or is that kind of out of scope?
Okay, so that, I think it's part of both standard 2 and 3. I think it is within your purview. I think anytime you're evaluating a special use, and you know, and it may come as part of the overall review of during the permit process to make sure that the engineering is going to conform. It's similar to this discussion that was just had with regard to that truck, the truck operation.
Okay.
But I think that part of engineering, part of drainage falls under public health, safety, and welfare. And that's in standard 2. So while drainage could impact value of the property, and so I don't think it's incorrect to say that it falls somewhat under the scope of standard 3. I think it falls squarely under the standard 2, public health, safety, and welfare.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
That brings up, I tend to, and maybe I'm wrong, but I tend to rely on the village that the engineering and the permit process will take care of those issues. Maybe it would be important for us to specify that as a condition, that of drainage.
You certainly can do that. As
Yeah.
Madam Chair, as you know, with a special use, you can impose conditions and recommend the imposition of conditions by the village board. So if you have specific engineering concerns that you would like the village engineer to take a look at or make sure that the village board addresses prior to taking a vote on it, then certainly that could be part of the motion and made part of a condition that, yes, we have a concern about, drainage, in this particular area where otherwise we would feel that this petition should be granted. We want to make sure that that's addressed.
Good idea. Thank you.
Yeah, I would say my thought is, because we have thought about the drain, if it could cause drainage issues. I know it's less a problem in the Bartlett homes than it is on the other side of town. But what would happen is as they go through the permit process, it would get found out if it was going to cause problems. And then what we would say is, depending on what the criteria where you had to place the shed is, you may have to go back to the planning commission. If not, if you just need to move it a little bit and it's still in the buildable area, then we would let them know. But yeah, we would catch it. And so, yeah. Anyways, Pat, you want to keep going?
Yeah, you can drop the shared screen. So
Okay.
so that those are the standards. And so I guess I just turn it over to you if you have specific questions. I know a couple have been raised, which have been great, and right on point. So was there any other particular concern you had about any of the standards? And I think that if you do keep going back to those standards and confining yourself to those standards in terms of your discussion and evaluation, then I think that's your charge, right? That's what courts look at. That's what and that's really what the petitioners that are coming before you are called upon to meet. And it may seem, it may seem sometimes like a long journey to get to for what may seem like a very simple result, right? To go through all of this and to be able to prove up standards and to go through this public hearing process. But that's why we have zoning codes, and that's why we have planning and zoning commissions, to make sure that these exceptions that are being asked for, and they are exceptions to the rule, conform to the underlying standards to make sure that they're not adversely impacting other properties.
I have one follow-up question, and maybe
Sure.
Noreen, you could look at this too. There are times where things become before us and then you ask a series of questions. There might be 5 or 6 from what I could remember, and it's a yes or no answer. Given what Patrick has presented, should we revisit and enhance the questions that we ask at the end of an evaluation, or are we okay with what we have and know that part of our assessment will be look at these standards, but then we could still answer these 5 or 6 basic questions that we're challenged with to get an approval? Andy, you might also want to
We
jump
used to
in.
always ask the questions, and we used to have them as part of our packet. What do you think, Andy? The criteria pretty much put up there, but we have a little bit longer list. It's in our code.
Yeah, it's, you know, we still go through it when we essentially are going like when a variance, like when we've allowed somebody to keep a shed outside of the buildable area, we're essentially going through it through the variance criteria, even if we're not, you know, our statement of facts are in the finding, they're just not, you know, recited. But I think we consider. I mean, we follow the ordinances, so I don't think it's a huge problem.
Okay.
And maybe just a suggestion, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, if I could, Andy, as part of the application, is the applicant asked as part of the application to address the standards up front so that the answers to some of those questions are before the commissioners? So
it's yes and no. So throughout this process here, specifically with the sheds, which are more so special uses, the questions I like to me are more so like the variance stuff, like this does this, this does that. When we give them the packet, for example, for applying for the shed, we let them know this is what the criteria is for the shed or for that.
So maybe something that we could look at, and you know, we can talk offline if it's okay with the commission. Maybe it would be helpful if we kind of amend the application or ask for some additional information with regard to the application, just as a little narrative, so that the applicant is addressing the standards up front, and number one, knows that those are the standards that they're called upon to meet, but also then gives the commissioners kind of a preview of questions and what the applicant feels is the rationale by which they meet these standards, and can help sort of guide the discussion. In some other towns that I represent, that is part of the application process itself, that it's required that as part of the application, there's a narrative submitted that at least in general terms, you know, provides some factual basis for meeting the standards. So maybe I don't know if that would be helpful or not, but just throw it out there for discussion.
No, I like that idea from a staff's perspective too. So yeah, and you know, we've been thinking about, as we've gone through this recent process, modifying it somewhat. So yeah, I think I like that idea too.
Yeah,
If nothing,
Andy, I've got a question for Patrick. This is Dan.
Hi, Dan.
You mentioned that you do some representation in some of the other towns. Is there like a common inconsistency, like within these hearings, that has gotten some of those villages into hot water? You know what I mean? Like where they're trying to talk about a standard, but at the end of the day, let's be honest, you know, we all live in the village, we know people, you know, everybody's a homeowner, they want to, you know, do the right thing, but they also want to follow the plan in terms of what's in the ordinance. Like, do you find any situations, even anecdotally, that you can share with us where like they've just had problems kind of reconciling the ordinance versus you know, trying to just help somebody that's a taxpayer?
Yeah, and I think that's a balance. I think you're right, especially with a town the size of Indian Head Park. I represent other towns that are similarly sized, and I represent towns that are significantly larger. And I think that where the problems do come in, and when they do come in, is when you do stray from the standards. And I think if you look at the standards, I think there's a lot of flexibility within those standards, because again, one is not dispositive over the other. To still try to be good neighbors, but at the same time, you know, using those standards to not only be a good neighbor, but also make sure you're being a good neighbor to the surrounding property owners as well. Because everyone, not only the applicant, but the surrounding properties also, surrounding property owners also have rights, have property rights, have due process rights. So as part of that evaluation, when you go too far afield from sort of that charge and that those guardrails that are built into the ordinance, that's when it runs into problems, because the legal standard, what that is called is an arbitrary and capricious decision, because it's really not based upon what are the standards, there's really no foundation for that decision, in other words. So the building blocks are the standards, that forms the foundation of your decision. And if you stick to those, I think you'll be in good shape.
And I have a question. It hasn't come up that I can remember, but do you have some comments regarding aesthetics? Like if we just, they wanted to put a polka dot shed up and we just didn't like how it looks, like where does that fit into all this?
Yeah, aesthetics that's a tough one, Madam Chair. The aesthetics really is not, unless there's something specific in the code that it's violating, then that's difficult. I've had cases where, people have painted all manner of thing, and that's very difficult to regulate. And it's certainly very difficult to regulate from the sort of limited scope that is this commission. There might be other ways to address it, and you could make recommendations to look at that as part of the building permit process, and if there's any ordinances that prohibit it. But from a land use perspective, when I say a land use perspective, I mean literally that. I mean does this truck terminal that you just considered, is this a proper use for this land? Is a shed a proper use for this land? And confining it to the standards, aesthetics is tough to fit into that.
We can certainly say quality, quality materials and such.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. But pink versus yellow, I think that's a stretch.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions while we got our attorney?
So I hope I helped. I hope I didn't create more confusion than may have been. But from what I heard, I don't have concerns about the manner in which you conduct the hearing. I think that, if someone ever looked at the process, I think the process is working. It's just, and it's difficult. It is difficult to apply these standards that are kind of created in a vacuum and apply them to the individual case, but that's really what they're there for.
Mm-hmm. Okay, excellent. That was really helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And anytime you have questions or just reach out to Andy, reach out to John, and I'm happy to try to help in any way I can.
Yeah, that was great. That was really great.
Thank you.
Okay, to move along. Okay, thank you so much, Patrick. That was wonderful.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hello.
Oh.
We have a question. I'm sorry, we raised our hand in the Zoom.
Oh, go ahead. Oh, yeah.
Something I wanted to ask is when we had talked to Mayor Henshaw about this issue a while back, our understanding is that, the village was looking for a process that would preserve the Bartlett community as it exists. And the special use process is generally one that is used to prevent changes that would be, adversarial or radical, or something undesirable to that community. In this context, though, where almost every home has a shed, it strikes me that, following the special use permit process is what is actually adversarial, that it's seeking to change the structure of the community. And I'm wondering if there's a better alternative for the village to be pursuing here, such as perhaps creating a separate zoning area where the established pattern of use that has been here for decades would be allowed to continue in the, as far as the sheds and the fences go, rather than taking a process where perhaps half to 2/3 of the homes might be forced to, remove their sheds or not be able to have them as it had in the past.
Sorry, who, was there a name with?
Oh, Corey Hoyka, 1724 Acacia Lane.
Oh, thank you.
So, Madam Chair, did you want me to address that?
Yeah, could you? Because I'm not.
Sure.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
Thanks for the question, sir. And just respectfully, I sort of disagree with the premise upon which your question is based. And I go back to the Living Word case. And the Living Word case talks about special uses as being akin to permitted uses, but for the impacts. So I don't necessarily agree with your characterization of what a special use is. And I think that this process is meant to look at what, if any, impacts these particular, in your example, sheds would have on any of the surrounding properties. So as I said as well earlier in my comments, there's really no one size fits all zoning district. So to do an overlay or to do some form of general grant of relief really undermines the zoning process, and I think undermines the zoning ordinance as a whole and weakens it. So while I recognize that a special use and applying for relief from the zoning ordinance is an extra additional step, I think that that enables the village to make informed decisions on each one of these, as opposed to sort of this blanket where certain impacts that one shed might have and another shed might have can't be properly evaluated on a case-by-case basis.
If I may respond?
Sure.
So the first thing I would wonder is, I've seen plenty of instances in, village ordinances where, special use versus by right, permitting is allowed depending on which zoning district you're allowed in. So I'm not really sure. I can agree with you that there isn't any possibility to create, a separate zoning district that allows for those distinctions. But I'd appreciate, more insight on that aspect. And then the second thing here is in terms of impact, when you have essentially the entire community that has signed a petition saying that they want these sheds in their community, how is the village necessarily really evaluating that sense of impact in terms of what the community perceives, the Bartlett community, versus standards that may be relevant in other parts of the village, but not necessarily in Bartlett. Here you have very large homes, or not large homes, large lots, configuration that's different from other parts of the village. And it seems to me that there hasn't been an investigation into, what is it that the people here might find impactful versus not impactful. I don't think, for example, most people mind here if the sheds are on the corner of the properties, because that's very consistent with what you'll see as you go along Willowbrook and look at other properties here, and also, for example, in the Grange Highlands.
Well, I don't think you can say that they didn't do a lot of investigation into this.
I can only speak to my subjective awareness. I apologize, but I can only speak to my subjective awareness, and I watched some of the meetings. I haven't seen that discussion, so that's at least from my perspective.
There were committees and there were interviews and people were asked to participate, and there were surveys. And what we came up with was we are clearly more lenient about the issue in that area for just the reasons you suggest. It is different, a different feel than the rest of the village. So we kind of made a nice compromise, because the village as a whole, we want to keep open and park-like, and yet this area is a little bit different. So we've made adjustments to accommodate that. Maybe not enough for some people, but we definitely heard voices and heard opinions on it.
And Noreen, I want to echo your point. I think that we've spent a lot of time on this, and we've tried to be pretty conscientious about citizens who, have these sheds and want to keep them, and that it seems to be, pretty pervasive within the Bartlett area. I guess my question for Corey, and I appreciate him taking the time, is whether or not, if he's applied, is there any special use permit that you've been seeking? I mean, it's neither here nor there, but I just thought I'd ask if you've started to go through the process, or if you're, here as just kind of a representative for the whole Bartlett area.
We have a permit in for 1724 Acacia.
Okay.
And so far we haven't, I can't remember any that we even turned down so far. We're doing our best to be accommodating, and if somebody shows us reasonable need for a shed and it meets within limited parameters, we want to accommodate our residents.
Okay.
And one last thing I'll say about it too is also, I don't know if he left. Are you? Oh no, Corey. Yeah, if you're here, we can tomorrow or this week we can talk more offline about it too, just to get the meeting going. But I'd be happy to have a phone call or something like that, and then we can talk about it. So, but I think it would be a good idea to keep moving for tonight.
I did have one quick question, if you don't mind, for our attorney while he's here. We did develop a process where applicants have to go to their adjacent neighbors, their immediate neighbors, and get a signature on a petition indicating that they do not have an objection to what's being proposed. As commissioners, what is our, I guess, what's the legal basis for our responsibility? We do want to take into consideration whether directly adjacent property owners have a particular concern, but our purview extends beyond that. I would presume. I don't know what the legal basis for that is, but representing the interest of the village as a whole, right?
I agree with you, and just to, it's not unusual, in terms of the consents or getting sign-offs from neighboring property owners, because of course, right, they're the most impacted, right? So you want to try to address those who are most impacted and see if there's an objection or see if there's not an objection. But you're right, you have to look at the impact on the micro as well as the macro. You have to look at how it's going to impact the immediate neighbors, as well as if there's a greater impact, because the immediate neighbors, might not care, but there could be some additional impact. And I guess it's sort of scaled, right, from that. So you look at it on a sliding scale standpoint, is, the impact of the side neighbors and the rear neighbors. The rear neighbors might not have if they have a significant setback, might not have much of an impact at all, but there might be a larger impact to the side neighbors, and there might not be any impact to 2 lots away or 3 lots away. So yeah, I think that's all relevant in terms of your evaluation process, but you can sort of scale it in terms of impacts.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any further discussion, or shall we move along? Okay, thank you again, Patrick. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Have a great night. Thank you all. Good to see you all.
Thanks, Patrick. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, and next we are hearing the petition public hearing for 1524 65th Place for special use.
Can we get a motion to open the public hearing?
Oh, okay. Would anybody like to make a motion to open the public hearing?
I'll move to open the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries to open the public hearing. And this is for a fence. 1524 65th Place special use. The petitioner has gathered signatures from the neighbors that do not object to this. The petitioner is Ms. Nunez, has provided a plat of survey. And is the petitioner present?
Yes.
Okay, would you like to tell us what you're looking for and why, and present your case for us?
I guess. Sorry, I'm kind of new to this. So our property, we were already approved for a shed from before, a long time ago. We currently back up to Highlands. The main streets were between 65th Place and 65th Street. Both are fairly busy drive-through streets. You know, we have small kids. We get a lot of foot traffic that is trespassing across our lawn because they use it as a cut through to get from Acacia and areas of Highlands over to the Walgreens area if they're walking, because there are not sidewalks. Some of our neighbors have put up shrubbery. We have tried, but it is unsuccessful because of the deer and the extreme distance from wildlife. The deer like to eat it, and it's so hard to water all the way at the end of the property line. So, you know, we are looking for options to try and keep our property safe with our dog and our kids, and stop it from being a cut through for people who are trespassing to not have to walk all the way along Willow Springs Road.
I see. Are you familiar with our village code ordinance on fences?
I mean, I've read it through. You know, we saw the minutes from last meeting, but there was a note about being for ADA compliance. We don't have an issue with ADA in my household. It's more just a safety issue overall for my family, and stopping the trespassing on our property.
Can you distinguish your situation from most of the homeowners in the village?
From the village or from Bartlett? Because we're very different from a lot of the village. We're here in Bartlett. We are one of the only properties that is not backing up to Walgreens and 7-Eleven there. So we are one of the 4 houses here along 65th Street that is wide open to people cutting through from Highlands.
Let's see.
All the other properties back up to other properties or businesses.
I see.
Sorry, is that 65th Street or 65th Place? I'm just checking.
We're between 65th Street and 65th Place.
Oh, okay. And
so we back up to Highlands, and there's a big ditch there.
Right. So what was the, you mentioned that you were previously approved for a fence. Could you give us some more information?
No. We were previously approved for a shed, sorry. So that's why my application is only for fence for this.
Oh, I see. Okay. And like what types of plantings have you used that have been like deer impacted and such?
We've tried different types of bushes. We've tried the evergreen, arborvitae, whatever. We've tried the privet hedges. We've tried lavender bushes. They keep getting chewed down, and they just can't sustain growing back there because it is so far at the end of our property, and you can't reach the hoses back to keep it watered enough. And with the drainage to the ditch, it just is not conducive.
Jen, I'm just trying to get bearings here. You back up on Walgreens, right?
No, we're across the street. We're on the other side between 65th Street and 65th Place. We do not back up to Walgreens. The properties that back up to Walgreens across the street from me do have fences, obviously, against the businesses.
No, that's fine. You're concerned about the kids from Highlands? Is that what you're saying?
We get a lot of foot traffic from Acacia and from LaGrange Highlands because we back up to Highlands, but LaGrange Highlands in general, and people cut through the subdivision. We get cigarette butts, we get beer cans, we get trash from people cutting through.
Okay, Highlands I'm just trying to, again, you said, I'm trying to find where you're at. You're at Walgreens, you're closer to the Walgreens, but then
Andy, do you think you could pull up a map? Maybe could you pull
Yeah.
up Google Maps and share?
I
So
will
we'll all
pull
make
it
sure we're looking at the same thing.
I
Yeah.
will pull it up, yeah.
so I've heard Highlands and Walgreens and they're not near each other.
I don't think
Yeah,
it's Highlands the
there's-
school. I think it's just LaGrange
LaGrange
Highlands.
Highlands, I think is what she means.
LaGrange
Residential.
Highlands, the city.
Oh, okay. I was just trying to, you mentioned kids walking through and LaGrange
No,
Highlands.
not really kids walking through. It's just people trespassing. I have kids. And we
Do the-
get trash
do the
from
other
people
houses-
trespassing through.
The other houses that are next to you that are closer to Willow Springs Road, do they have the same type of issue?
I don't know. I'm not, I have, we are in the ideal location where we are basically right where Laurel dead ends to, and they cut between mine and my neighbors to the west.
Her home is the one shaded in blue.
Yeah, thank you.
So this is 65th Place, 65th Street, and then this is Walgreens and Brookside Plaza over here.
Okay.
So they cut through, they come down Laurel and cut between us and our neighbor.
Well, if you've read the ordinance, we've got to find some reason to grant the variance or the special use. And I can't find any of these permitted criteria that fit your situation.
I guess that's why I'm here. Like trespassing and the protection of our property, our belongings from ongoing trespassing and littering, from people cutting through, how that's why I'm here. And that's why they recommended.
That doesn't differ that everybody else is in that situation. This is not an exceptional situation.
I think because
Missing anything?
I think because of how our property is basically I don't know, like right where it curves, it is all giant overgrown with trees, and there is a wooden fence there right where the property curves, because that is Highlands. So then people cut through from the dead end in Laurel.
Where does the property curve? It looks like a perfect rectangle.
There is no. So you can watch the street and see how the street curves. Where the street curves, there's a wooden fence that's acacia. It backs up. That is all overgrown trees. And so then people come and they cut through
I see what
and they cut through at the dead end of Laurel. People come out of acacia. There's that little walkway right there. You can see.
Yep.
Where Briarwood Lane ends, there's a walk through there, straight to Laurel, and then they come through and they cut through our property.
And you can't do anything with some trees and thick brush.
As I said, we've tried to put trees back there. They are not growing. We have invested money to try and do it. It's a bunch of dead hedges. So we were told to try and come and discuss with you guys and get approval so that we can, because this was happening for other areas in Bartlett that do have fences and are trying to keep them and maintain them. Some of our neighbors that also have fences, so they said go ahead and try and apply, and that's why we're here.
Hey, Brenda, which of
Because
your
that is in our opinion, that is our best option, in our opinion, for protecting our property and our belongings and stopping the trespassing in the most comprehensive way.
Have you looked into a no trespassing sign? I know a sign's not going to deter somebody from doing something that they want to do otherwise, but have you taken that step, since landscaping doesn't seem to be doing the trick?
No, I will admit we have not tried to stick a no trespassing sign up on a flagpole or something, but to your point, I agree, it's not going to stop somebody who is just used to cutting through there.
So do either of the houses on either side of you have fences up?
Not directly. The one, like I said, where it curves, where Laurel curves, does have a fence, and then they cut through between ours and my neighbors. Because the other houses are allowed to have fences along their back because they back up to acacia. So they do, I think some of them have fences. And some of them are applying to keep their fences because of where they back up to acacia.
So you're saying that people typically cut through between the 009 and the 010 parcel, the 010 being your parcel as highlighted on the map, I think is what you're saying.
Yeah.
And have the 009 parcel people, have they attempted to mitigate anything?
She has some lovely peony bushes, but again, they cut across the back edge of her property through the, people walk on a diagonal, right? And they cut across the big drainage ditch that's there, and then cut across the middle of our property and up between the houses.
Hey, Andy, I got a quick question for you. I'm looking at the overhead map here, and it appears there are 8 parcels along, 65th, and then like a little bit west of where the curve is. How many of those houses have fences? And then I guess within that, like how many are going to be back before our commission requesting some type of special use on it?
Which homes, Dan? Like these?
So all along the line here, like she's doing it right now here, or you are. I'm not.
I don't.
So how many of those?
Yeah, there are a few. I think maybe 2, maybe 3. I don't have them all in front of me, but they will. They're either going to be on next month's agenda, or they did not submit their paper, and then we're going to have to follow up with them because those are unfortunately not compliant fences either. So
I understand. I guess, I mean, this hearing started out with the neighbors being okay with it. How many of them are okay with it because they're just fine with the concern? And then we've only got 8 houses on the block. How many of them actually have fences? So that we can kind of have a little more like context for why those homeowners maybe feel the way that they do about the cut throughs.
Yeah, well, for those, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 right there.
Right.
I would say, I think off the top of my head, I think 2 or 3 of them, probably 2, have some kind of fencing.
I can see 2 if I like zoom in to Google Maps satellite view. And that would be, it appears that it's the house on the corner of Howard and 65th. And then the house at 1614, which I think we already reviewed for a shed previously. Which is 2 houses to the left of the current petitioners. It's that one with like a brown, parcel 008, right there, right below your cursor.
Okay.
Excuse me, can I make a?
Sorry, go ahead.
Can I make a comment? This is Lou Roski.
Sure, Lou.
Okay.
How you guys doing? If you don't mind. The thing is I live over there on 65th, 1704. All right. And my backyard is acacia, which people constantly cut in through too to go to Walgreens. And my neighbor next door, and then everything that way. Okay, all the way down to Willow Springs Road. They all complained. They mainly complained to me. But I told them to apply anyways, because at 65th Street, is the problem because people do cut through. They don't want to walk on Willow Springs Road or whatever. They do cut through, but those are the 7 or 10 houses that are affected. Even the one on the corner of Howard, they're very affected with people coming from the park there too. They have tons of garbage constantly, and they've been there at, I don't know, close to 40 years. They do have a fence, so, you know, but this is an issue for our community anyways, because that's not, you know, that is LaGrange Highlands back there, but you guys own half of the street, of course, because you guys paved, you know, Indian Head Park, we paved half of it and Highlands did the other one. But it is an issue, how you're going to take it up. You know, like I said, you know, everybody said no on it, but this, if you drove back there, you would see everybody's backyard wide open. Some of these people that moved in here too have kids. You'll see the toys and everything. It's I don't know. You know me, I'm a worry wart.
Andy, is there, because it appears that there is already a fence at the back of these properties where they do conjoin with acacia. At least I think that's what this is that I'm looking at. And I think that's what the petitioner had mentioned. Would the village want to entertain the idea of owning the rest of that as a background extension on the backs of those properties? Because I hesitate to approve an entire property encapsulated by fencing.
So you're asking what would the village consider putting up kind of our own fence?
Yeah, I guess would the village consider that as something that they would want to pursue just along the backs of those properties to address the concerns of those property owners, as opposed to just allowing a single house to fully encapsulate their property in a fence?
I think we definitely could consider it. That would be a board decision, so I can't make that call, but we can definitely bring it to the board and say, you know, throughout this process, we've heard a lot of concerns about people, especially back up to the LaGrange Highlands.
So that's, I guess, what my concern, and I totally understand where you're coming from with cutting through. It's a special use permit. If we grant it for a fence for the reason of trespassing, then even in Old Town, people could say, well, I don't like these kids cutting through here. I want to put a fence up, and then and now I have a standard I can hold that we approve. So that's my concern with like a special use. If we consider trespassing a special use instead of it being more of like a, and not meaning it's really law enforcement, but that's like something that, you know, you could call your, and I know it does make sense, the people will be gone by the time the police showed up or whatever, but if we go ahead and we use this as a granting a special use, then I feel it would open up anyone who doesn't want people cutting through to be able to hang their hat on this decision.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's my only concern, but I totally understand what you're coming from. That was a great idea, Danielle, like, and I don't know if, you know, that's even plausible, but like, if it was to cut that boundary off, if we have a fence that blocks Walgreens because it's a, whatever the rule, the wording
commercial
for
property,
public, you know, property. But if we say yes, and then it's kind of like, well, I don't like someone cutting through my yard over here. The kids are always cutting through to go to school. I want a fence, and you guys did it there. And that's just my 2 cents on.
Yeah, if the commission would like, you could, you could pass or give an official recommendation to the board to explore the option of doing that. And then that would go to the board and they would consider it for certain. You could do that if the commission would like to do that.
Is this the only location in the village? It's the only one I can think of offhand where there are lots that fall within the village that are basically through lots, and the public right of way on the backside is not in the village's jurisdiction, right? So it's kind of a similar situation to the locations where we've said it's okay to have a fence if you back up to a commercial property that has a parking lot, you know, or something like that. In this case, these homes back up to a public right of way that is not in the village's jurisdiction. Is that unique? Because everywhere else they back up to
is that
a homeowners association, right?
Yeah. Do they have a fence there by Ashbrook that backs up to LaGrange Highlands?
Yeah, and Ashbrook backs up to other homes immediately, not a street.
Yeah, right there. Is that a fence? Do they have fences there?
I
Or is that,
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. They have some arborvitae's like right here, but then yeah, I don't think they have fencing over there. But yeah, like all of acacia over here backs up to like this Laurel Avenue. This is not Village. That's LaGrange Highlands.
Andy,
And there's a fence there, right? There's that, well, it's, I mean, it's just a, like a,
Ashbrook doesn't have any fences,
There you
Yes.
go. Yeah.
but we do have a lot of arborvitae. And there are a number of fences from people who live in the Highlands that are along Ashbrook. But Ashbrook doesn't have any.
I mean,
Yeah,
this is
I
one
know a lot of
situation.
Highlands homes. Oh, sorry, Daniel.
I was going to say, this is one very unique situation where I think whatever solution is arrived at needs to be a solution that is implemented consistently for the impacted homeowners along that whole stretch that back up to 65th Street, and it should be consistent. And it's not necessarily that each individual homeowner, you know, encircles their lot with a fence and just pushes the trespassing issue over a lot to their neighbor. It would be something that would work to prevent people from being able to avoid just using 65th Street to walk to Willow Springs Road and get on the sidewalk, which is what they should be doing. If they're trying to get to Walgreens, they should walk down 65th Street and get on the sidewalk at Willow Springs Road.
Yeah.
And not be impacting, you know, Village of Indian Head Park homeowners by trespassing on their properties. But there's a wide right of way there, and it looks, someone mentioned that half of it was repaved by the village. So is the boundary literally running down the middle of the street?
No, so 65th Street was repaid, but that's a village street. I think you might have meant some of Laurel. But yeah, 65th Street, that is we are actually in charge of maintaining that.
Oh, okay. So there's freedom for the village to think about a solution that's that would work for everyone who's impacted by this.
And Andy, the fencing that separates Indian Head Park or these residents from Acacia, is that individually owned by each landowner, or does that have anything to do with Village?
So the fencing that's at those two homes, that's the homeowner's home fences. The fence in particular at the curve, that wouldn't have anything to do with the village. I'm guessing it's got to be that homeowner, or yeah, I'd have to look at it. But yeah, it wouldn't be the village's as of right now.
Yeah.
I think like we're just dealing with a lot of different variables. It seems like there's a decent amount of unknowns in terms of who has fences, who doesn't. And before we get too far in the weeds on it, I mean, I like Danielle's idea about a fence being along like the back line of the properties to prevent people from, trespassing. But I would ask the applicant whether that's something that they're going to go along with before you get too far in the weeds as to whether or not it's a good idea or a bad idea. Like, I mean, we're trying to solve a individual local problem without having it impact the rest of the village. But if nobody in that neighborhood is supportive of that concept, I don't think that we should be spending a significant amount of time discussing that.
This is Jessica, the homeowner that's currently being discussed. I think we would be open to it. My only concern, or one of my concerns, I guess, because Indian Head Park does maintain the cutting of the grass and stuff in the ditch area there. My question and I guess concern would be the type of fencing that would be put up, and how that would work, because I know like the cowboy fencing that's at the end of the street that Andy has referenced a couple times. It's something that the homeowner is responsible for maintaining, but I know that it also gets broken and jumped over a lot. So if it's something that the village is going to be putting up, just understanding the process for maintenance and that type of thing would be,
I think that'd be a
one
whole
of my
different
questions.
like situation we'd have to get to.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, I think it's and Lou's on here too. So I guess Lou, if you had any thoughts on it too, would it help solve part of your problem?
Yeah, I'm debating because some of the houses by me have argivites, but they're tall. They've been there 50 years. Okay, so you know what I mean? It's expensive too to get 6-7 footers, and you'd have to pack them in real good tight. All right. Some people have already lost them, and you know how that's aggravating when stuff dies and constantly maintained. But, or the best thing I know you guys don't like it, but to me, the best thing would be putting up that fence like Walgreens has, just along that stretch. And that would take care of those homes. I could check to make sure everybody, but I believe 99%, we don't have to enclose our whole property. We're not asking for that. I'm on that lot, that side too. So we're just asking to block people from coming through. A few of you people here on the board have been to my house. You see how wide open it was in the back. And, you know, my patio, I don't even have patio blinds on my house. Okay. And people, I find footprints after the snow on my patio and stuff. So, you know, I don't know what they're looking at. I'm not that great, but you know.
Yeah, it is very open. Lou is right. It is very open back there.
It's totally open. And like I said, I can see, you know, at night I can look right in and see people in acacia. You know, we're on half acres, but that would be an issue to me, would be maybe like that. And if anything, just go so far, because I know you guys like to keep the bushes and stuff in the village. At least it would cover it up so much, but it would stop people from walking through our stuff. Maybe pole to pole or something like that, because that's what it basically is. These lot sizes are pole to pole, so that'll stop them from sneaking through. And as for the house over there on Laurel, or Howard in the corner there, they have that issue with it. And the lady next door, the village put that in the cowboy fence for them because that's right by the park, which they don't even want the cowboy fence. They'd rather have another fence too that could block them off. Because they do jump and break the fence and they're stuck replacing it constantly. So, I don't,
Well, I think that whole issue is for another day.
Right.
But good discussion, good thought-provoking discussion here. I think for now, are we ready to vote on recommending or not recommending approval of this petition?
Yeah.
Okay, so would somebody like to make a motion that we recommend, and you can vote yay or no, we recommend to the board that the petition for the special use for 1524 65th Street be approved? You can make a motion, you can vote yay or nay. Is that correct, Andy? Is that okay?
Yeah, you kind of got to make the motion either way.
Okay, yeah. So we're making a positive motion, you can vote yay or no. Would somebody like to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, and Dan second. All in favor of making a recommendation to the board that this petition be approved, please signify by saying aye. All opposed to this recommendation, please signify by saying nay.
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 Any abstentions? Okay, vote carries that we do not recommend to the board that this petition be approved.
And Noreen, I think it's worth noting that it's not approved in its current form. Not to say that there isn't a solution here, but in its current form, we can't approve it.
Yes, and hopefully the minutes will show that there's a lot more to discuss and talk about on this matter in that area.
Do we at this point need to make a recommendation to the board on additional thoughts for consideration, or would that be something that we would do at a later
It's
time?
not in front of the board. So, I mean, it's not in front of us.
I would think that they would put something together, maybe the group, those house homeowners, and present that at some point, right?
Yeah, the next will probably be generated by staff one way or another, right?
Right.
Yeah, and and I'll bring it to John, and also we have Trustee Farrell Mayor and Trustee Eck here as well, and I'm sure in their report to the board they'll mention it too. So.
And Andy, I'll get a petition for it if you don't mind.
Oh yeah.
Right,
yeah.
Lou? You know what I mean?
No, sounds good, Lou. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for your time, Ms. Munez. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Petitioner. Thank you for joining us here today. And we'll see what we can do. Okay, for our next, we have a public hearing for 6506 Howard Avenue for a special use. Mr. Lotke is petitioning for a special use permit for a shed, a detached structure that does not currently exist. He's gathered signatures, notice has been posted. He's provided a survey and yeah, detailing the proposed shed and fence. And is the petitioner here this evening?
Yes, it's actually Mrs. Lucky. This is Kat.
Okay. All
Hi.
right, thank you. Would you like to say a few words before we open our discussion?
Sure. Let me throw this caveat out there, though. I do have a 10-month-old baby trying to get a distant ear, so bear with me, please. So yes, we are petitioning for special use to have a shed. We do not have a current shed, so it would be a new structure. We're pretty new to the area, but we actually just moved in about several months ago, and in the course of that time, the one thing that has been a little bit of an issue for us is storage for all of our outdoor supplies. We do have a fairly large home. We do have a basement. And we do have a 2-car garage, but the issue that we've run into is that our 2-car garage is nowhere near the spacious enough to be able to hold our cars as well as all of the outdoor equipment. We do our own lawn care. We maintain our house ourselves, and that requires that we have a lot of dangerous chemicals and dangerous equipment and supplies and all of that. And the practicality of storing things in our basement, like a lawnmower or gasoline or things like paint and such, is just not it's not safe for the family, and it's not convenient whatsoever. Having to haul all of those things right through our living space to bring them outside has been a little bit rough. And actually, as part of my petition, I've provided some pictures of what our garage looks like, and with reference to the parameters outlined, our garage is about 20 by 20. So in its current state, we cannot open our car doors when the cars are in. So it's a little bit tricky with 2 young children and trying to get an infant out of her car seat. And especially when it's getting kind of snowy out. So everyone has to be unloaded before we get into the car, and then to be able to get everyone in the house, it gets a little bit tricky. So yeah, that is basically our situation, and we're hoping that even though we don't fit the parameters of every bit of this special use instance, that the fact is that we're short on space for those outdoor supplies, and hoping that you will give that consideration.
And is this in the buildable area or not? The survey looks like it's not the buildable
Chair,
area.
yeah, Chair Costello, let me share my page, share my screen real quick. Wanted to kind of go through this with everyone so
Okay.
everyone can see. So where they have proposed the shed, it is not in the buildable area. Before we get into that too much, so to get ready for this month's agenda, I basically outlined, shaded the what's left of the buildable area for the different homes, and so you can see that is what is left of their buildable area right here. Basically, so staff is recommending approval of this one, of this shed. As the petitioner mentioned, it's hard to fit everything in the garage. Their garage size is in fact 20 by 20, which was kind of the base point that staff was looking at for, 20 by 20, you're most likely not going to be able to store everything, as well as the cars or as the vehicles. And that's kind of what our research found, and that's what you're hearing from the petitioner as well. We do recommend approval, but I do think that moving the shed to the buildable area is probably the only way that it could be done to go along with the zoning ordinance.
Let me just jump in there about that. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a planner, and so knowing where the buildable area is and what's possible for us is not my expertise. So as long as it's not on top of our patio, or as long as it's reasonable. I really would not like to have it in the middle of my yard. And we do at the end of the property, we've got a lot of scrub and just trees and brush. So it makes sense to put it closer to that, just because we do have that natural screening. And it does, talking about maintaining the aesthetic of the property, having that not smack dab in the middle makes sense. But we do have some space available to be able to be a little bit more flexible with that. But I would ask for some insight as to how that works, and I don't know if that would come through in the permitting process or how that would work.
Yeah, so I can go over it a little bit now. I think it would be good for everyone. So the buildable area is basically where you're allowed to build a building or to have a detached structure on your lot. There's rear yard and front yard setbacks. They are a certain amount of feet, or there's a calculation. And the idea behind it, well, there's a few, but it's basically to make sure that homes aren't built too large, that you're not encroaching on other people. Just the way the Indian Head Park zoning code is, we do have pretty stringent or tight buildable areas out of the intention to have more kind of open or park-like atmosphere. But like, for example, a front yard, rear yard, or not front, a front yard setback has to be 30 feet. The rear yard has to be 40% of the depth of the lot. So if it's if the depth of the lot's 100 feet, the backyard has to be at least 40 from the back to the 40 feet from the back, that you can't build there. And so for this home, what's left of the buildable area in the rear yard is what is shaded in that blue right there. And if you could if you put the shed around here, but I do hear what the petitioner is saying about it'd be maybe easier to screen outside the buildable area. But the shed ordinance was written so that it would have to go in the buildable area as a general rule, because to prevent it from encroaching on somebody else's property. So as of right now, the staff is recommending approval of it, but to meet the ordinances, it would have to be in the buildable area, and I don't think there's reason for a variance to move it outside the buildable area.
And just from the pictures that I'm seeing on what you've displayed and on Google Maps, my assumption is that if it is placed in that buildable area, there will need to be some additional screening added to it, at least on the side of the property owner to the left of the other home. Yeah, right there, right. And perhaps to the back, I would guesstimate as well.
So can we go back to the plat? Because it's kind of, that makes it a little bit easier to see as far as I'm concerned. So basically it would have to go directly next to our patio. Is that?
Yeah, pretty much the only space that is left is right around here.
Okay.
And I know it's not ideal, but to meet the ordinance, it would have to go there.
Sure. I mean, it's hard because it's like we have this big lot with a lot of space, and it's got to go directly in front of one of my windows.
Well, it shouldn't have to go in front of a window.
Well, that's pretty much where what looks out into that area. That's our great room window. So yeah, that's a little rough, but I mean, it is what it is. I guess we'll have to figure that out.
Can I make a statement really quick? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So
and
this is,
yourself, please.
This is Amanda.
Are you
I am a resident.
Okay, and your address?
6527 Laurel.
Okay.
So in prior meetings, there were already sheds that were already built on properties that were approved not being in buildable areas. So can't this be a consideration for where she wants it placed on her property?
Those were when there was simply no place in the there was no buildable area to do it.
Or no, those were actually those are
pre-existing.
Yeah, those were pre-existing sheds. And the way the shed ordinance was written was that basically the pre-existing sheds that have been there for a long time could be allowed to stay where they are at. And that was out of the idea to try not to make homeowners have to move existing sheds. So that is the reason they were allowed to have it not in the buildable area was because of the because they were pre-existing, and the ordinance put kind of extra consideration on that.
So you're stating that those were approved prior to like any changes being done in the village?
So those sheds had been there for a while, varying amount of time depending on the individual home, but so basically the village board passed an ordinance to set up the procedures and the guidelines for granting a special use for sheds, and there was essentially a caveat in the ordinance that said if the shed is existing and if the adjacent neighbors are okay with it, then special consideration be given to allow the shed. I know it's a lot to allow for the shed to stay where it's at. Basically, if you're coming for a new shed, the standards are a little bit higher. That's just the way the ordinance was written, to kind of take into account the people who have been there for a long time and have had the sheds. So unfortunately for new petitioners, it is kind of a tougher standard.
Sorry, Andy. So one more time as background. Have adjacent neighbors approved of the shed And when was this particular shed built?
This is a new shed.
This is a new shed for this lot. I think the resident was asking about granting approval for previous homeowners that had sheds outside of the buildable area.
Okay, I just want to clarify that we were on the same page in terms of what we're asking for here.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, I think that in the case of the existing sheds, well, in our case, it's just a little bit frustrating that while I do really want a shed, having to put it right in front of my window is because we're going through all of this the right way and following through all of the correct procedures that wouldn't be because we didn't do it outside of the procedures that we have to build this in front of a window. And the more I think about it, the more it concerns me, because it's actually going to, it's going to block light. It's literally going to be right in front of our visibility to the outside, because that patio is right. I mean, it's right there. That's the only place that we could put it, and it's right in front of major windows. So is this something that we could come back to if I can provide pictures of how it's going to impact us? And
I think that to be honest with you, the only way to get the shed outside of the buildable area would be to try to get a variance, which I unfortunately don't think you would meet the criteria. If the board wants to consider changing the zoning ordinance to maybe make it easier for sheds to get a variance, then they could do that. But other than that, I don't see how it could be done if the board doesn't want to change it. But what my recommendation would be is if this commission passes if this commission recommends approval based on the condition, that when it goes to the village board, to mention to the board that you explain what you've explained tonight, and they may want to adjust or they may not. But I think with the zoning code we have right now, it really has to kind of stay in the buildable area.
Andy, could I make a comment? Lou Roski.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
All right. Those houses on Howard, from the corner down by the park on down, those few houses kind of have lots that are shaped different than ours too over here with the half acre down 65th place. I've been in each one of those backyards, and it is really tight there. If people wanted to go and look at it, even for pictures, I mean, if they would just show up, a couple of you, even Andy, show up and look in the backyard. They were even talking, the neighbors were even talking about if they back to back them even or something, just to help out the situation. Because those houses are only 25 years old maybe or something. They're not as old as mine. Mine's over 50 some years old. It's just that the lots seem to be different. And like I said, it just, because I've looked back there and they were discussing it even with me, and I thought it wouldn't be bad, but like I said, your zoning thing, that are a special use for it to move it. And I thought the idea of keeping it way back by you guys everybody wanted the brush and all that. They're doing that, they're hiding it. I didn't see nothing. You had to give them some yard. You know what I'm saying? That's just my opinion.
No, I know what you're saying, and from a screening perspective, it sometimes would make sense to go outside the buildable area, but the way the ordinance is written is buildable area. It has to be in the buildable area.
So I see that the proposed shed size is 12 by 12. Is there any option to perhaps decrease that, and that it would block less of your space that you're concerned about behind your house? And you
I mean,
could still
that-
store. Oh,
I mean,
sorry.
that's possible, but I mean, if we're a family of four now, and you know, we live, you know, we have a lot of outdoor space and we want to use it, and that requires, you know, and like I said, we do our own lawn maintenance, so that requires lawnmowers, and you know, we blow our own snow. So and my husband works in the trade, so you know, he's got a lot of tools. So I feel like we wanted to maximize the amount of available space for outdoor gear. I mean, it is possible, but you know, as Lou said, you know, we kind of hoped that you know, we might be able to work with our neighbors to the north of us to you know, figure out a place that might be conducive to work together. And you know, we're kind of limited because that we do have that big brick patio there. So so I mean, it's possible, but I think anything is gonna block that visibility to the outside. So I mean, I think I would like to explore a little bit more, and you know, when it's light out, go take some measurements, see how it would actually look to have something blocking my windows, and you know, then at that point, I guess probably present more of a case. But
Yeah. If you would like, we can continue it until next month. Nothing wrong with that.
Why don't you request a continuance so we can ponder and see if we can work to get better on this one?
I can get some additional pictures and some that I can present for evidence.
Yeah, yeah.
And Ms. Watkey, I'll give you a call tomorrow and we can talk a bit about it too. Talk it out. So if you would like. So
yeah, I would appreciate that.
And Noreen, this is Greg. Pulling back from an earlier petition that we heard 2-3 months ago, the petitioner was petitioning for a new shed or a new detached structure. And he also was proposing construction in the buildable area. And it was a nearly identical situation where we continued the hearing to the following month, in which he did come back and was able to demonstrate that he could construct the new detached structure within the buildable area. So we do have precedent set in the context of a new request for a detached structure, in which we did effectively turn away a petition for building outside of the buildable area. However, he was able, through a continuance, able to come back before we formally voted and present a solution that worked for him and was within the buildable area.
Oh, you went mute there, Greg. Okay. No, I think that's a good idea. So, Mrs. Slapke, it's okay. We'll just continue this to next month. Is that all right with you?
Yes, that works.
All right, good. And Andy, you'll follow up, right?
yeah, I will.
Okay,
The
thanks
other-
for your time. And there was a hand up earlier.
One of the things I would suggest is look at some of these lean-to sheds. That might be an option for you, rather than a structure. So as you're out there looking for solutions, you might look at a lean-to structure, and that would lean against your house if that's even possible. I'm just thinking of options for you at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, okay, very good. Is anybody, I can't see everybody in the gallery, so I'm not sure if anybody is has a hand up. I'll have to alert me. But we ready to move on?
Yeah, can we get a motion to continue the hearing?
Okay, sure. Would somebody like to make a motion to continue the public hearing for the property at 60, the petition for special use at 6506 Howard Avenue.
I'll make that motion.
Danielle in second, or Diane in second?
Second.
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstention. Okay, motion carries. We will hear that again next month. Now we'd like to hear the petition for a special use for the property at 6500 Howard. This is Mr. Swiderski is petitioning the village for a special use permit for a shed that does not currently exist. He has gathered the signatures, completed all the paperwork, notice was posted. He's provided us a survey. And his garage is 20 by 22. And is the petitioner present?
Yes.
Okay, do you want to say a few words to start us
Yes.
off? Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for listening to me today. Good news for me is my neighbor, Mrs. Lockey, was real thorough, and I'll be pretty much piggybacking off her. But just like her family, I have a wife and two kids, ages 3 and 1. We have our own yard tools. We have a snow blower, which I'll have to bring into the garage because it's currently sitting outside before Snowmageddon tomorrow. And there's a lot of, outside of outdoor activities with pots and plants that we use during the summer, statues, Christmas apparel. We need the extra space. So that's why I'm requesting a special use for a shed. Like Mrs. Lackey, we were hoping to get it removed away from our structure because the buildable area is very small compared in regards to the patio that we have in our backyard. And like Mrs. Lackey, the only buildable area, which is just to the left of that cursor, is our back is our kitchen. We have a bow window, so that the top right side of the cursor would be our window, and then there's another window that has our sink to it. So we were hoping to get a special permit to build it away from our structure.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so your your survey shows just a little kind of handwritten little box there that is proposal for the shed. Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't precise in my area. I wanted a 12 by 12 shed in the far northwest corner of our property.
I see. Okay. Okay, no problem. Would you like to request a continuance so that staff could work
I would.
a little bit more, and we'll just see where this is going?
Please.
Okay, would somebody like to make a motion to continue the public hearing for 6500 Howard Avenue?
I will make that motion.
Okay, Danielle, in a second.
I'll second.
Okay, Diane, second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? And abstention? Okay, motion carries to continue the public hearing for 6500 Howard Avenue special use until next month. Thank you, petitioner.
And Mr.
Thank you.
Swiderski, I'll reach out to you too.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Now we're moving on to a public hearing for 1724 Acacia Lane. It's a special use. And this is Ms. Hotchka. Hoyka, thank you. Is petitioning the village for special use for a detached structure that does not currently exist. Paperwork has been properly filled out. Signatures have been gathered. Notice was posted. Petitioner provided a survey. And the garage dimensions are 22 by 22. And this staff is recommending approval of the shed because the dimensions of the garage are smaller than our standard. And adjacent owners have signed off. Petitioner, would you like to say a few words?
Hi, yeah, so I used to actually have a shed during this, and it was taken down because I had a tree fall on top of it.
Oh.
So I actually lost shed space, but the house only has 4 closets, 3 bedrooms, and a coat closet. So I store everything in the garage. I mean, I don't have a basement. My attic is unusable for storage. So, and I garden, I do yard care. I mean, we're just storing everything in the garage and I'm tripping over stuff.
I see. Yeah. And we are staying within the buildable area here, is that right?
Yes, the proposed shed location is in the buildable area. You can see on my screen, the shed proposed location is right here, and that would be right here, so it would be in the buildable area.
And do we have the proposed dimensions and I guess like build materials of the proposed shed?
Yeah, it's just a standard shed from Home Depot.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hear the first part of what you said. I apologize.
It's a standard shed from Home Depot. It's like 12 by 12, but I submitted that.
Oh, sorry. I apologize. I must have missed it in the packet.
Do we have that, Andy?
I might have left that out of the packet. I apologize.
So it's like a 12 by 12 vinyl or wood or?
Wood.
Wood.
Wood. Okay.
There is a
shed
page that shows
at
a
the end.
image. Maybe it was intended to be with this
Yeah, maybe
petition.
I got cut off. I'm not sure.
Oh, is it
The
the
one on
Best
page
Barnes
53.
Fairview 12 foot by 12 foot?
Slide 53?
Yes. Is it slide 53?
No.
No. Okay.
Okay.
No worries.
Would be just a plain wood shed, not a barn looking shed,
Okay.
just plain. But it's if you drive by Home Depot, it's just one of their standards.
Yeah. Okay.
And so then it would have landscaping placed around it, what on the side facing the street and facing the neighbor to the east. And then you
Yeah.
access it from the, I don't know, the back, the north.
North side.
Yeah, so I'd access the north side, the one that faces my yard.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then it would be, there's like a sidewalk right next to the garage. So it'd be right next to the sidewalk. So there'd be no screening between the garage and the shed. But then the house behind me has like a row of trees, but like I said, I like to garden. So I would plant next to the, shed on both sides, visible from the street and from what's really not visible from anybody, but.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So is that one, Andy, where someone would advise this homeowner about what plantings to plan on? This is one where it would be installed and then there'd be an inspection.
Yeah,
to make sure
there
that
would
the
the screening.
landscaping was okay. Okay. But they could get some guidance
Yeah.
about what to plant to make sure that they'd be compliant
Yes.
ahead of time. Okay.
Okay, so it's in the buildable area. And other than screening and paying for the bulk mailing fee, is there any issues we want to discuss, commissioners? I believe it meets the criteria of the ordinance. Would somebody like to make a motion that we approve the petition for special use for a shed at 1724 Acacia Lane?
I move.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstention? Okay, the motion carries that we are making a recommendation to the board to approve the petition for special use for 1724 Acacia Lane. Okay,
Thank you.
all right, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Luck. And we've got one more here. We've got a public hearing for petition for 6527 Laurel Avenue, special use. And this is Mr. and Mrs. Quintana. Petitioning the village for special use and variance for a shed, a detached structure that does not currently exist, and a fence that does not currently exist. Everything has been filled out and submitted. Signatures have been gathered. Notice was posted. Survey has been provided for the location of the proposed shed and fence. The shed is not in a buildable area. Garage is small, very small. Okay.
Chair Costello.
Commissioner, would you like to say a few words?
Chair Costello, could I explain something really quick?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So this one is a little bit odd. I'll show you. So this home was built before it was in the village. It was annexed as the whole, as most of, as well as the entire Bartlett subdivision was from LaGrange Highlands. And so because of that, it was not built under village zoning code. And so as you can see right here, that blue shade, that is their entire buildable area. So their home is not technically compliant. That's why they need a variance as well, because they don't really have a buildable area according to our code. So that I just want to explain that part, why it's not in the buildable area and why village staff is recommending a variance as well, since this is a unique circumstance in that they really don't have any buildable area. But I just wanted to explain that really quick and before handing it off to the petitioner.
Okay, well, let's take this one at a time. Let's talk about the shed. Petitioner, do you have a few words to say?
Yes, good evening. So basically we would like a shed on our property. Our garage is about 19 by 19. We have two cars to fit in our garage that barely fit. Our door entrance into our house can barely open to maybe squeeze your body through to get to your car. I have to fold in my mirrors for my truck to fit it in my car. I'm sorry, into my garage. Same like all the other homeowners, we have big properties. We have snow blowers, we have lawn mowers, we have, kids' bikes. We have 3 kids at our property, at our house. So, we have a lot of outside activities. So that would be the reason for wanting the shed on our property.
How big is your lot? A 100 by 200.
I think we have the plot of survey on there as well.
Yeah. So it's a half acre lot, like everything else. Is just oddly placed, right?
Yeah, and where we wanted it already placed, there is like, where do you see where I put like those squigglies to the like right of it? There's already like a line of somewhat trees there, and on both sides and behind. So it would be covered.
Yeah.
So I have just a weird question. I see that on your shed specifications, you specifically called out that you wanted a garage door on the shed. Is there a particular reason for that? Are you intending to use it as another garage space?
No, that would be the purpose for a tractor. Just because our properties are so big, to have a push
tractor
lawnmower, we would not be able to cut our grass in a timely manner.
Okay.
Um, 10 by 10 by 12. Okay.
In looking at the, I do understand that the buildable area situation here is a little bit odd just because of the proportions of the site, but if we're being consistent with how we're addressing this with other homes, wouldn't we recommend that the shed be placed up tight behind the house or next to the garage and then shielded with landscaping? I think approving putting it in the back corner of the lot is still problematic. I mean, I do understand that we might have to bend the definition of the buildable area a little bit here because of it just being such an unusual situation, but the purpose of saying we want new sheds to be within the buildable area is to have them be tighter to the primary structure.
Yeah.
You know, and then shielded from view so that they're having a minimal, you know, potential visual impact on the neighbors. Right.
It looks like maybe behind the garage, it's kind of a nice area.
I mean, there's a wall there with no windows. I presume that that's the back wall of the garage.
Yeah, it looks like it because there's a driveway in the front.
That is no windows back there, but we do have a door exit from our garage to the back.
Okay.
Right, but to the right of that, isn't there enough space there? Maybe not. Maybe
that's where our patio door is, to the right. You mean, oh yeah, if you're looking at that in the garage door, yes, then there's no windows there. But I mean, aesthetically, to our neighbors that look directly into our yard, I don't think that would be something that they would want to look at. And I mean, both of our neighbors signed off on having it in that place, so I don't see.
When I looked at this one, I think Commissioner Barnes brings up a good point. My thinking was that if a variance is going to be granted because of the property, then it would be good to put it where it could be screened to the maximum effect. So I thought that the location was okay, but I totally understand what Commissioner Barnes is saying, and if the commission would like to do that, then that's okay too. But my thought was to maximize screening, but that's me. So
One more time, Andy, could we get the physical location of the shed? Just like, can you put the arrow over the top?
Right here is where would like to put it.
Okay, and what, Diane, just so I understand where you want it, can we do that real fast?
Around here, Diane?
Well, up tight to the house in the back where there's a windowless, you know, the
I
back
think
wall.
if you
of the
scroll down to
garage.
the next slide, the next screen, there's a better picture.
Yeah,
of the
there's
back of
actually
the
a
property.
view of the back of the
Yeah.
house that you
That
can
one.
see.
Yeah.
This is another situation kind of similar to what I think that Bob was suggesting, like maybe a, you know, more of a lean-to type shed, like thinking of it as something that's uptight to the house.
I don't want
You
to
can only access it from the outside, but it's kind of placed tight to the house will be less of an impact to current and future neighbors.
But also, I mean, from our end, we do have, you know, a sliding door right there where eventually we would like to have a patio area, and that would block most of our backyard, since in our unique situation, our yard is more to the side of our property just based off the placement of the house.
Yeah, I don't want to get too far in the weeds here in terms of like where we believe that the shed should be placed based on the unique circumstances of the zoning. I mean, it's an annexed property, and if there's approval within the neighbors to put it in a certain place and not have any adverse impact on them, I don't really want to be like deciding whether the shed is 10 feet from the window or 15 feet from the window. I want to make sure that we kind of follow the guidelines where the neighbors are okay with it. In this unique circumstance, it's really not the same type of property as the other ones we consider.
Yeah, we probably won't have another one like this in a long time.
Make a comment, Noreen. This is Lou Roski again.
Yeah.
You guys approved 6537 Laurel for his, which is basically behind her house. So making her put hers right up to her house, that would be almost like back-to-back sheds. I know both of the properties. She's my across the street neighbor. The other house.
Say that again. If it was up by the house, it would be back to another
Well,
shed?
it would be pretty close because where you guys put a 6537 Laurel was pretty close to her back of her house as it is, because she sits on an angle there. So if she got to the right of her, I know it's going to be an exception on this and everybody's going to get mad, but she needs to be, for the angle I'm looking at, probably the streets there, yeah, to the right would be better for her. I don't know where she asked for it, but anything behind her, because the other houses, you could see the other house at the very bottom of the screen, close to your arrow to more to the left if you move it. Right there's the other guy's house at 30 or 65, 37, Laurel, that you guys approved that had to come back, at Ryan. I can't, I
His
don't
shed
know.
is gonna be right around where the arrow is.
Right, you see what I'm saying? And if you make, you know what I mean, the sheds are gonna be, I don't know.
Yeah, that was the case, I think that was referenced earlier where
Right.
his original proposal was to put it in his side setback, and we
Yep.
said, no, please come back and show us a solution.
Yep.
Where
Yeah.
you put it closer to your own home and not
Got to give her some room.
not closer
because
to your neighbor's windows.
Right, it's very close back there. If you walk back there, both houses, the property lines are very close there, because she kind of got messed up on that way that property was made
Yeah.
Yeah.
or said the house was.
So let's see.
What would putting it, like as I'm looking at this image, would putting it kind of more next to the end of your home where the garage is be an option? Looks like you might have some room there. Kind of where the cursor is. Oh, that's my cursor. Never mind. So sorry. Yeah, kind of where
side of the
Andy's
house.
cursor is right now.
What about the side of the house?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I was suggesting. Because then it wouldn't block any patio.
We do have windows there, 2 windows on the side of our garage. And then also there's a tree. I mean, I think just visibly, you could see that more from the street, and then us having to cover that more when there's already kind of like a little nook that's covered in the back corner would just make more sense for the property.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So staff is okay with that, right, Andy? Yeah, you kind of thought.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, and it really is an oddball lot. Not so much the lot, but the placement of the house. Yeah.
Yeah.
Other questions or discussions? Should we take a vote on this? Would somebody like to make a motion to recommend to the board that we approve the petition for the shed, the special, well, it'd be special use and variance for the shed. And we'll talk about the fence in a minute. Somebody like to make that motion?
Well, I got one more question,
Okay,
sorry.
Sure, sure.
So if we do approve the proposed location of the shed for this property, I'm still guessing it's going to need screening on at least one side, because as I'm looking at it on street view right now, I can kind of see the little, the nook that she's referring to that does have what appears to be shrubbery on 2 sides. So
Yeah.
I think the one side would still at a
Yeah.
minimum require screening.
So we
would-
actually have shrubbery on all 3. So it goes, it's along the side, the back, and the other side. So the only viewable part of it would be the front of the shed.
And that's,
And the village will do a screening inspection either way, just so that, it'll be squared away.
I should have added that to the petition, that with the conditions that petitioner pay the mailing, their share of the mailing, bulk mailing fee, and that appropriate screening be approved by the village. Anybody would like to make that motion? It's getting late. I can't repeat it.
I move that we approve it.
Okay, we've got a motion to recommend to the board approval.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, Bob, second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
One nay. Abstentions? Okay, motion carries. Now we got to go to the next issue, the fencing. Petitioner, you want to tell us about your request for fencing?
So basically, if you look on the plot of survey, I just marked pretty much from the start of kind of off of our driveway a little bit from the corner of our garage all the way across the front of the property. We already have all shrubbery around the right side of the property. So it would just go along like in front of it, and then just along the back to kind of separate for us from our neighbors, only because we do look directly into their property. And then just a gate along, there would be gates along the side of the driveway and on the side of the property. I guess just like anyone else in this area, I mean, we have kids, our property is unique, and most of the time our kids play on the side of our yard just because it's a lot bigger, which is closer to the street. We don't have any sidewalks for the kids to play on. You know, just for security reasons, we also have dogs. We'd like to enjoy a full property instead of having little garden fence to kind of block them into somewhat of our patio area so they don't go running, which we've had incidents, not only us, but other neighbors, of dogs running in the street.
Can you give us an example of why you feel like your situation is unique?
I think just because the placement of our property is not, so our address is Laurel, which we don't even face Laurel, we face 65th. So the way that our property, you know, faces is directly into our neighbor's yard. And then also because our neighbor's yard line is so close to, you know, almost our patio line, a lot of the time our kids play on the side of our yard, which is basically like what we consider our backyard, which is a lot closer to the street than if our property was, or if our house was turned the correct way originally, we would have had a lot more space in the backyard area to play. I mean, right now we have this huge half-acre yard, and our dogs unfortunately have to be secluded in like a little area because otherwise they'll run. And I mean, our dogs are already going to be 9 years old. To, you know, put a fence up to shock them, or, you know, tie them down to the, you know, the grass is just kind of something that we don't want to do to them at such a later age in life. And unfortunately, when we bought this house, we weren't aware of all the conditions that the village may have, and it's really deferred us from, you know, possibly staying in the area, unfortunately, just because of some of these things that are in place.
Well, when did you buy the house?
We bought this house about 2.5 years ago, and, you know, rehabbed the whole house.
And since that time, I mean, the fences for the dogs, I mean, a lot of people use invisible fences. I'm just wondering why you guys didn't choose to make that investment.
Because we originally, like where we came from, our dogs weren't used to having that. We did have a fenced in property before, and we were, unfortunately, didn't look into some of the regulations before buying the property. We thought, you know, you have this half-acre of land, you know, at least you'd be able to use it. But unfortunately, you know, with us not being able to have a fence around our whole property to keep our dogs in, we had to, you know, just put up these little like garden fences in the back of our yard, so at least we could keep them in somewhat of an area instead of having them run in the street.
Yeah. I think some people will just use long leashes and tie them up in the back, or walk dogs, or you have a dog walker if you can't do it yourself, or I don't know. We're looking for something unique of why your situation is different from others.
I think just because we were annexed in, you know, over the years, I feel like our situation, this whole Bartlett area, is different. I mean, the rest of Indian Head Park is more secluded, you know, family-like, area where we're more closer to a lot of businesses. We have a mental hospital nearby. I mean, there's properties that have fences already in our neighborhood. So I don't understand, like, I guess the difference of us spending, thousands of dollars of putting maybe shrubs up compared to having possibly a chain link fence or something even nicer on the property.
Unfortunately, that's just the way the ordinance is written.
Yeah, that's what was agreed upon. And we have had surveys done in the village about fencing, and it was not a decided opinion of the village that we wanted fences. So I understand your thoughts and concerns, however. Well, it's a fence for the property at 6527 Laurel Avenue.
I'll motion.
Sorry. Okay, we got motion and a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. All opposed, please signify by saying nay.
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 Any abstention? Okay, the motion carries to recommend to the board that we do not approve the petition for fencing. I hope I worded that right, Andy. 6527 Laurel Avenue.
Howard address 6500 and 6506. It'd be like when these people come in for the special use permit into the village, if we think we should make them aware, that it doesn't meet the certain criteria before we get here and do it, and we all kind of spend our time doing these things, and then we got to adjourn or push it to the next week or next meeting, and then we back them up. I just if we could kind of advise them, like, hey, look, it's not the buildable area, so we shouldn't even bring this up yet until you get your variance request, or let them know that there's no variance request to be made because it's a new shed, or I just think it would save some time on everyone, because the people come in and they're like, oh, well, we want it here and here's why, and then we're like, well, the buildable area is this amount, you can only do it. And like for two of those examples, that was nice, we had that buildable area highlighted. If we could do that going forward.
That is what we will do going forward. This one was kind of an odd circumstance because we had scheduled it, then not scheduled it.
Right, I know.
We didn't
There's
want
so many of them going through. I get it. I totally get it. But if we could,
going forward, that is the plan. So yes.
And we are a little bit kind of still formulating a little bit.
I know. Right.
The discussion is really good. I think, I think we're doing bringing up a lot of ideas. I think that's great.
I think after, the next few months, we'll be pros, right? It'll be like, all right, boom, boom, boom.
Exactly. Yeah. And we are getting better. And okay. Somebody like to make a motion to adjourn for the evening?
I will make a motion to adjourn for the evening.
Okay, second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, see you all next month. Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Great
Enjoy the
meeting.
snow. Be safe out there.
Yeah, drive safe.